So for those that don't know, Superhuman is the fastest email experience in the world. Our customers get through their inbox about twice as fast as before. They reply to their important messages sooner, and many of them see inbox zero for the first time in years. Our mission hasn't changed. Actually, remarkably, no. From day one, it was always to help you be brilliant at what you do. Well, to date, I think our biggest accomplishment is building the fastest email experience in the world. I was looking at the cumulative metrics by the numbers the other day. We're now at the point where our customers have sent north of 100 million messages. They've triaged well north of 350 million conversations. Collectively, they've used over 1 billion keyboard shortcuts. And we have some rules of thumb internally on how much time different keyboard shortcuts save. So we're confident in saying that just from the keyboard shortcuts alone, our customers have saved tens of millions of hours, although Superhuman is a lot more than that. So zooming out, it's probably closer to 100 million hours plus. And that probably is our biggest accomplishment. Other things folks might be interested in, we're just north of 100 employees. We've raised about $121 million plus in venture capital. We have some of the best investors in the world for the various stages that we have. First round capital led our seed round, arguably the best seed stage VC in the Valley. Andreessen Horowitz led our Series B, IVP led our Series C. And again, these are some of the best investors you can ask for at those stages. So we're very fortunate and very blessed to be working with those people. We have a fan base that love our products. That's really the thing that gets us going in the morning, is just how much people love Superhuman. I'd say that's a pretty good summary. It's really simple, although it may sound ludicrous in the space of email. Every single person who buys Superhuman pays $30 per month for it. That's right. Most of our growth to date, in fact, almost all of it, has come from a combination of press, virality. Superhuman is a really viral experience. You may have seen that the email signature sent via Superhuman, modeled after Hotmail in the old days. It still works remarkably effectively. Content marketing, thought leadership. We have created the preeminent way of measuring product market fit for venture-backed technology companies, and are well known for that. We also have a very strong thought leadership about game design as it applies to business software, and also more recently through performance marketing and through more traditional content marketing. So our head of marketing was the person from Peloton who ran user acquisition there, arguably the best performance marketer in the world. And we now have a very widely read newsletter on productivity and related topics, where we go deeper than any other publication. We're really getting into the science of things. So you could call all of that traditional B2C marketing. Of course, some of those channels you'd also apply to B2B. That said, we are now investing in B2B. I recently brought on board a head of revenue and customers. This person comes from 11 years at LinkedIn, where he scaled LinkedIn Talent Solutions, LinkedIn Recruiter, obviously the jewel in that crown, but then also scaled LinkedIn Learning, which is the learning platform from $3 million of ARR to nearly $100 million of ARR. So he's done the journey twice, and we're now doing that journey at Superhuman. I think what was really interesting is that we found that 50% of our subscriptions, roughly speaking, were either expensed to a company or paid for directly by companies. And there was clearly a lot of organic marketing pull for a B2B solution. And when you look at the net revenue retention by end of year, on a single seat subscription basis, we have best in class metrics. We're up there with your Spotify's and your New York Times and your Pelotons and your so forth. But when you segment down to the types of seats that were being bought by enterprise customers, you're looking at best in class for enterprise. So in the high hundreds for what net dollar retention is by the end of the year. So I think what's really interesting is we have the opportunity not just to build a really big B2C company, and that's well on its way, but also to build a really big B2B company, and that's in its earliest days. I wouldn't say there's a huge AI story today. I think there's definitely a lot of potential to do some really interesting things. A classic, simple example is, imagine somebody sends you a long email, being able to do some basic natural language processing and say, this is the sentence you need to care about, or this is the ask, and it's kind of buried in amongst other things. That's an example of something that we want to do down the line. But there is so much low-hanging fruit in simply building better, faster software, where the workflows are actually easier and more rapid, that we've been focused almost entirely on that segment. And we will circle around to adding AI type enhancements, but there's still tons to do just in making the software itself better. Absolutely. And I would say that Superhuman is productivity software, but I'm really a gamer at heart. And today our business software, it feels like work. We have to check our email, submit expense reports, enter data into our CRM. And what I've always asked is this: what if we could make software less like work and more like play? And with game design, I know that we can. Now, most software companies worry about what users want or what users need. Nobody needs a game to exist. There are no requirements. When you make a game, you don't worry about what users want or need, you obsess over how they feel. And when your product is a game, people don't just use it. They play it, they find it fun, they tell their friends, they fall in love with it. So it turns out that game design is altogether a different kind of product development, and one that most software companies don't actually know how to do. I'm very fortunate that I used to be a game designer back in the day, and we've been able to leverage that into building a whole new kind of email experience. I think this is an opportunity that a lot of software companies have. They can be anywhere, just like they always could be anywhere. But if I were a founder, I'd still move to Silicon Valley and I would still do this experience. The density of best practice here and the collection of knowledge is unparalleled, even compared to anywhere else in the States. The extent to which people live and breathe startup and technology cannot be overstated. It is honestly remarkable. And look, if you're a founder, things are hard enough as it is. The company probably will fail. Why wouldn't you give yourself every single edge possible in order to not fail, in order to actually be the most successful that you possibly can be? So I would say yes, startups still should move here. Do they need to? Absolutely no. And I'm sure you've seen this. I also experienced this as an investor, as an active angel investor. Investors don't really care that much anymore where the companies are. And so I would take that off the table as the reason to be here. But there are still plenty of other reasons to be here. And I would cite two. Number one, the density of knowledge and talent. Number two, the M&A outcomes, actually, probably most relevantly to our audience today. There are relatively few companies that can do big acquisitions. There's obviously a lot more that can do medium-sized acquisitions. Many of those in the technology space are in and around the Bay Area. And a lot of how these deals start, and I think of my own experience selling Reported to LinkedIn, is they start casually. They start with maybe a business development relationship, or maybe you met at a conference, or maybe even a social gathering, actually. And there is no substitute for being in the mix of things. I can't imagine any reason why you wouldn't do it. I think one only has to look at Adobe as the all-time great example. Microsoft's another fantastic example, actually, of companies that I think many could never have imagined making that transition. Then not only making the transition, but continuing to accrete crazy amounts of value. I think Adobe for me is a North Star company. It's the company I most admire and the company that I think Superhuman could one day become. SaaS is a tried and true, proven business model. It has only advantages as far as I can tell. Now, I know the transition it's easy to enter into it if you're a new company or you're building a new product, and change is hard. But we have two shining examples there of what can be unlocked if you actually do end up making that transition. So on the one hand, Yes. But on the other hand, perhaps not from a traditional perspective, are these companies worth 10 to 25 times revenue? Probably not. And I do have friends here in the Valley who exist on the investing side who think that we're in for a little bit of a correction, as many of these newly minted unicorns go out to raise perhaps towards the end of next year or the year after. And maybe they'll find that they don't quite warrant the step up in valuation that they were hoping for into the next round. However, I also have plenty of friends who believe the opposite is true, and that the acceleration will keep on happening, and that will keep on happening for the fundamental reasons that as an investor in the asset class, you're still making money, even at today's valuations. What I always say to folks is, if you can be the kind of company where your revenue is growing so quickly that at any point you could be profitable, that's the ideal case. Now, the question is, should you be profitable? I think the answer is almost never. If you're venture backed or you're PE backed and your goal is to get as large as physically possible, well, then you should be reinvesting any profit that you have directly into growth. You should be trying to get as big as you can feasibly get. I'd say that we are in the earliest innings and we do have some way to go. But this was actually why we chose our last round investor, IVP, and specifically the board partner, Ajay Bashi. So Ajay joined Dropbox as the head of finance. He then became the head of corporate development, and he then became the CFO that took Dropbox public. So very few people have actually grown with a company from the first few hundred employees to become a C-suite leader. Even fewer have done so to at a company as relevant as Dropbox. So we're very excited that we're building the right team and that we're getting the right people around the table, but there is still infrastructure to build. Yes, absolutely. I think that, again, to look at Adobe and Microsoft as North Star examples, they both ran extremely aggressive and very successful acquisition playbooks for Creative Cloud and for the Office suite. It's hard to remember today, but most of the Office suite was actually acquired in. And similarly for Creative Cloud, most of those products were acquired in. I think we can run the same playbook. I think that just as there's a Superhuman for mail, there could be a Superhuman for lots of different verticals. It might be a little early for us with a valuation of 825 million. It puts us in the realm where we can probably do small scale acquisitions, but they have their own set of challenges. We certainly couldn't do a mid-sized acquisition, but we're on a good path, and I imagine that will be a much more valuable company a year, 2, 3 years from now. And as we continue to grow, these things become more and more plausible for us.